Hello, everyone. This is Chad Erickson with Advice Media. Welcome to this month's webinar. We're very excited to have you here with us today and to continue with our learning process. This is great. Hope everyone's surviving the February cold chills that it seemed like they're running throughout the country. I was in Houston about a week ago and went for a run and was freezing cold in Houston. I mean, who knew it was going to get that cold this time of year, but it certainly did. But it's amazing. We're already 2 months through the 2018 year, but hope everyone's having great success. Again, welcome. I want to set up some of our rules for today and sort of our housekeeping items. While we don't make this interactive on the spot, we absolutely do want you to ask any questions that you would like during the presentation, and I'll be moderating those. And when Jesse, who's our presenter today from Payments 360 is done, we'll get a chance to moderate those and give those questions to him so that he can help you as well. And you'll just do that on the control panel, just under the chat feature. And so that'll be available to you. So look forward to that. If you have any other questions or things I can help with as well, let me know. But let me go ahead and without too much hurrah, let me go ahead and introduce Jesse. Jesse Medaz, one of the founding partners at 360 Payments. He's been in the merchant services industry for over a decade and has focused on the healthcare vertical for the past 5 years, which is one of the things that really drew us to him and what he's doing. Well, we actually met him at the Inc. 5000 conference last year. Both of us were been Inc. 500 clients and made that great level, which is very amazing to do, and both been on there for a few years. But networking with different groups, it was like oh, this is awesome, and this is another thing that could help our clients actually save money and be better at what they do. But Jesse has a passion for changing the negative stereotype of credit card processing companies, which I loved as well. I've got to know him; it's absolutely true, and he loves letting business owners know that there are still companies in the industry that they can trust. Jesse and his wife, Sarah, they reside in San Jose, California with their 3 young children, and they enjoy hiking and wine tasting and trips to Tahoe, but most of the time they love to be out and exploring the local parks with kids, and I can appreciate that. But Jesse, thank you for so graciously agreeing to be here on our webinar and look forward to learning today. I'll turn it over to you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Chad, for the great introduction and the chance to be here and talk to your network. Yeah, and like you said, that's one of the main things that I get excitement from is really educating business owners on this necessary piece of their business that we find is kind of on the wayside for a lot of businesses and don't know a lot. They know they need to accept credit cards. They just don't know how or why or what processes they need to go through. And there's a lot of smoke and mirrors out there that we try to bring to light. So let me jump in right here. This is just a quick little bio on me. Chad covered a lot of it, but I'm one of the founders of 360. We really built our company from a customer standpoint. If I was a business needing to accept credit cards, what would I want? And it would be mainly honesty and integrity from my processor. And full disclosure pricing, really making sure you understand everything that is getting charged and why. Customer service is a huge aspect that we focus on, making sure that, if there are any questions or problems that they get addressed immediately. And then, we process for more than 500 medical offices, and that includes dentists, doctors, surgery centers, hospitals, things that just fall into that healthcare arena. And I find a lot of times, especially with medical offices, that they're so busy and pulled in so many different directions that payments is an afterthought, and a lot of processors take advantage of that, and the practice ends up paying way more than they need to. So what I want to really touch on today, and I'll try and get through it quickly, within the next 40-45 minutes, and leave some time for questions at the end. But I wanted to just touch on credit card processing 101. What is credit card processing? Some tricks and traps that are in the industry, things to know that you should avoid, and then just how to choose a good processor. What are the steps? What are the things to look for? if your practice is looking for a new processing company or just opening up a practice that needs to have a processor. And then just best practices as a medical office accepting credit cards. What are some good practices to follow? So let's jump right in here. So processing 101, following the transaction flow. So this is just basically showing how credit card processing works. So as a business accepting a credit card from a patient, when you run your credit card or run their credit card through that terminal, it dials out to the processor, and that's kind of where we come in here. The processor then connects with Visa, MasterCard, whatever card brand it is, and gets an authorization or a decline on that card, basically asking is there that amount available on that card. Then once it gets approved, then that goes to the Federal Reserve and gets recorded and approved by the Federal Reserve on the national side. And then the Federal Reserve deposits it into the business bank account. So this whole process takes 48 business hours. There are faster 24-hour funding options that it basically is just fronting the money once it comes past the processor to the merchant's bank, and then the whole process gets completed within 48 hours. And really where the money goes. So as the process of the transaction flows through, there's charges to you as a business on being able to accept credit cards. So there's two different real entities that where fees come in. So the card brand is the major one. You know what type of card your patient is handing you, whether it's a Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express. There's over 250 different possible rates attached to those card brands. Just in Visa cards, there's over 100 different types of Visa cards out there. And it's really tough and really impossible, I would say, to differentiate, you know, we accept this Visa card, but not that Visa card because it's a higher fee. Because some of them, you know, may just say signature preferred on them, or might just be a different color. It's very, very hard to differentiate by card. And then there's the processing company. So there has to be a processing company involved to actually move the money. Visa and MasterCard are the ones who are, you know, have the credit. So they're charging the fees on the customer side if you don't pay your credit card bill. They're also charging the fees on the business side for actually giving you the privilege of accepting credit. And then there's the processing company that's actually moving the money from the card holder to your bank account as a business. So, like I said, majority of the fees are called interchange fees that go back to Visa, MasterCard, and Discover, and American Express. And the processing companies charges a small amount usually just to move the money. And that can go anywhere from 0.05% all the way up to 2%. And it's really up to your processor on what fees they charge. So the processing industry is really the last unregulated financial industry. So processing companies can charge whatever they want. They can add fees in whenever they want. And that's really where they get, you know, that stereotype comes in where it's a shady business or shady industry, because there's so many businesses out there that just take advantage of that. So these are the three pricing structures that you find in our industry. Interchange Plus is the best one. And then there's tiered pricing and flat rate plus surcharge, or with surcharge pricing. So tiered pricing is basically, you only get 3 or 4 rates. And they take all of those interchange fees, those 250 possible rates out there, and crush them into 3 or 4 rates. I call it buckets. And so it's basically leaves a lot of room for the processor to add in fees on those buckets. They charge the highest tier in each rate, whether it's a qualified rate, a or a mid-qualified, or a non-qualified rate. Usually those are the tiers. So there's a lot of disadvantage to the business if they're on a tiered model, because you end up paying the highest rate for that bucket. and not just the rate for each card. The flat rate model is what a lot of companies out there do. It's very simple to understand. Square is a big one out there that does that. It's a flat 2.75%, and that's it, said and done. Whatever your volume is that you do that month times 2.75%, those are your fees. The problem with that is the back end, all processors have the same cost back to Visa, MasterCard, those 250 interchange rates. And a lot of times, depending on your industry, the rate is going to be much lower. The overall total effective rate is going to be much lower than with that flat rate that's charged. There's no processor that's going to do the processing for free or lose money on the processing. So a lot of times they'll charge a flat rate that sounds really good, but then when it's all said and done, there's a lot of other fees and other surcharges that weren't talked about that make your overall fees a lot higher. So Interchange Plus is the best one to be on. It's really full disclosure. It shows the interchange fees that go back to Visa, MasterCard, and the plus part is what fees go to the processing company. And those are usually shown in separate sections on the statement. It's very easy to understand. These are the wholesale costs that no matter who you're processed with goes back to Visa, MasterCard, and this is what my processor is actually profiting off of doing my processing. So we always suggest, if whoever you're processing with, make sure you're on an Interchange Plus pricing model. So getting into a little bit in the industry, what tricks and traps are out there. There's a lot of different things that sound good up front, but may not be the best situation for you in the long run. Like I said before, the processing industry has a little bit of a shady stereotype to it because it is unregulated. And there are processing companies out there that either send a packet to a rep in the mail, and they read the packet and now they're out there selling, and there's no certifications needed and things like that. So a lot of times there's reps that don't really understand the industry, that just go out and get a statement, send it back to corporate sends them back a proposal, and they say, here's your savings, and they have no idea why or what's going on, and they just sign people up. There's a lot of turnover in our industry for that reason. And so a lot of times people will sign up because they really like the rep, and then 6 months later that rep's no longer with the company and they're locked in and they can't go anywhere, but they don't have the service or that person that they liked anymore. So the little secret in our industry is that all processing companies have the same cost, whether you're First Data and have hundreds of thousands of clients, or you're us with 3,000 or 4,000 clients. We all have the same cost back to Visa, MasterCard. So the only negotiable part is the markup that we charge above that wholesale cost. And so that it really helps to understand that, and that's what you want to look for, is that markup. Bait and switch. Basically, a lot of processors will come in with a very, very attractive quote and a low rate, but within 6 months, a year, that goes way up. So this is an example of a rate increase letter that was sent out from, I think this one was from Bank of America, but the highlighted area, you see the rate will increase by 0.32%. So if you're a business doing $100,000 a month in processing volume, they just raised your fees by $320 a month. And all they have to do is send out a letter. And a lot of times these letters are sent, the month before it happens, and it just looks like junk mail. No one ever reads it. They give you 30 days to get out of it. But you don't even know it until you see the fees go up on your statement and column, and now you're already locked into it. So this is another example. A lot of the big banks, this is a common thing. Every single year, Wells Fargo raises their fees. So it's a very good time for us, because a lot of businesses will reach out to us to review their processing at that time. So making sure you're with a processor that doesn't raise fees, or making sure that you have in writing that your fees are guaranteed is a big plus with whatever processing company you use. Contracts is another common thing in our industry that businesses don't understand, or they just think is there's no way to get around it. Usually it's a 1 to 3 year contract with anywhere from a $200 to $1,000 cancellation fee if you close the account before the 3 years. Some have auto renew clauses in them where you have to cancel within 60 days or 30 days, or it automatically renews for another year. And there's even some out there with liquidated damages clauses, which basically means the cancellation fee is whatever your average month fees are times the amount of months left in your contract, which can get ridiculous. So I've seen a customer with a $40,000 cancellation fee, and they had no idea what they were signing up for at the time. So there's really no way to get out of that until the contract is up. So most processors nowadays, you don't necessarily need to sign a contract. A lot of them will try and get you into a contract, but if you push back and say that you don't want to sign a contract or you won't sign a contract, they have month-to-month options. So in the process of reviewing processors, definitely that's a question to ask, is about what the contract terms are and if there's a month-to-month option. Leasing equipment is another big thing that I always say to stay away from. A lot of processors will inflate the cost of the equipment, saying it's $1,000 for the terminal, but you can lease it for $40 a month. And what a lot of businesses don't realize is what the lease terms are and what they're signing up for. So most leases are a 48-month term, and it's tied to whoever the signer's credit is. So I've had situations where an office manager is the one that's setting up the processing, and they signed off on it, and it was tied to their personal credit. And if you don't pay the lease, it affects your credit score. Some processors don't even tell you about it, so be careful on what you're signing. Sometimes the third page of the contract is a lease for the terminal. And most of the new terminals now, with the able to run chip cards and everything that you need, are $300 to $400 cost to own them. And a lot of times they'll lease them for anywhere from $30 to $80 a month. So an example here, a lease for $40 a month for 48 months, you're basically paying $2,000 for a $300 terminal that you have to send back at the end of the lease. So there's a lot of extra fees and fluff there that the processing company or the processing rep makes a lot of money on leases, so they want to lease it, but it's not in the best interest of you as a business. So if you have a processing company really trying to push you into a lease, be very careful of working with them, because they're really focusing on their best interest, not yours. Processors charging PCI fees. PCI stands for Payment Card Industry, and a lot of these are just the security fees. All businesses that accept credit cards have to be PCI compliant. And basically what that means is that it's just how you deal with credit card information in your office has to be secure. It's kind of like HIPAA compliance, and just make sure that you're not writing down credit card numbers and throwing them in the trash after, or just keeping full credit card numbers in a drawer somewhere. Has to be locked. So we have a survey that is filled out, and most processors have some sort of online survey that you take to be PCI compliant, but a lot of processors will charge for it. And they'll just send an email, and if you don't fill out the survey, they charge anywhere from $10 to $45 a month for non-PCI compliance. And then some processors even charge monthly PCI fees, even if you are compliant and do take the survey. And a lot of these are just, it's just a profit place for processors. There's no fee on our end for customers to be compliant. So a lot of these is just pure profit for processors. So they can also be called, you know, breach protection fees, trans armor fees, data security protection. There's a lot of these, we call them junk fees, that you'll a lot of times see on the last page of your statement that are 10, 15, 20, dollars a month, that it's very easy for the processor to just kind of slip these in, and you multiply that times hundreds of clients, and they're making a big chunk on it every month. So how do you choose the best processor? So as a business, whether you're an office manager or whoever's on the front lines, probably get bombarded with solicitation calls and people walking in trying to talk about credit card processing. So there's so many processing companies out there. How do you choose the best one? So first off is, I say, always review the reputation. Get the card from the person, and look them up on Yelp. Some people love Yelp, some people hate Yelp, but it is definitely a great way for public to review unbiasedly, to check on what the processor can do. There's a lot of processors that aren't on Yelp, but that's definitely a good place to check. Also ask for testimonials, especially in your industry. There's a lot of processors that are just very generalists, and they just sign up anybody with a pulse, and they go from every single business. They just walk down the street and talk to every single business there is. So definitely try and get testimonials from other clients that are already using them in your industry, and actually call the references, because that definitely will help knowing that there's other people that are using them that are happy. And then it's a pretty simple option, but just Googling them. Google the company name, Google the rep's name, and even put in the rep's phone number sometimes. And a lot of times, credit card processing is just a side gig for a lot of reps. And you Google the phone number and find out they're also a real estate agent and an insurance agent and a general contractor. And, it's just not the focus of the rep and not their full-time job. So if you have a question or a problem, how reliable is that person going to be if it's not their main industry? And then on the company side, there's a lot of times there's a website called ripoffreport.com that there's a lot of processing companies on, and it's just businesses explaining what happens when they feel that they were ripped off, and they weren't told about certain things, or there's lots of different issues that come up. So this is a great way to look into who you're actually considering for a processor. American Express has changed a lot, and so you want to make sure that whoever you're looking into for a processor has American Express new OptBlue program. And basically what this is it's combined American Express on the same statement with Visa, MasterCard, and Discover. So it's combined the billing. So you get one bill at the end of the month for all your your credit cards. They've actually reduced the fees that are charged by American Express. A lot of businesses don't take American Express because they used to have really high rates. That's not true anymore. And the deposits are faster. So you get all of your credit card funds deposited at the same time instead of getting a separate deposit for American Express. So OptBlue program has been out for a couple of years now, but there's still some processors that aren't on it, and you want to definitely be on this as a business. And then just some qualities that you want to look for in the processor. knowledgeable and consultative, knowing the industry, knowing the different options of how to take payments. Price is definitely a factor, but there's a lot of different things on ways to streamline the whole payment process in your office that are definitely things that you want to look for that your processor knows about. Fast response time. A lot of times this isn't looked at until it's too late and you've already signed up and already started processing to find out that the service isn't what it's all cracked up to be. So when you have an issue, who do you call? If your rep's on vacation and they're the only contact you have, you're kind of up the creek with no paddle. So how fast can these issues be resolved when you do have issues? And so even before you sign up, find out who you would call for customer service and test them. So if you want to test, if you've already signed up with a processor and want to test them, just an easy way to test is ask for a batch report. So just call customer service and just say, hey, I need a reprint from my settlement from yesterday, and see how fast they can get that to you. It should be a very, very simple request that should be to you within minutes. And if it takes them, 3 days to get you a batch report, that's kind of saying something about what, when there's a more serious issue or you're not getting funds, how long is that going to take to be resolved? And then multiple contacts. Like I said, if your rep's on vacation and you have no other person to talk to, that can definitely be an issue. So are you calling into a call center with hundreds of people and, that's your only other option? Or is there somebody, locally or, a direct person that you can contact more than just your single rep? So those are definitely some things that you want to look for when you're reviewing processor options. And then getting a quote and just having it, the main thing, all processing companies want to give you a quote, and it makes sense. And the best way to find out from what you're doing right now with your current processor, if it makes sense to change to another processor, the easiest way is to give them a copy of the processing statement and review it and get an apple-apple comparison. But you want a very detailed comparison, and you want to know where these numbers are coming from. A lot of processors will just give you a very broad, well, your total fees are this, our total fees are going to be that, so you're going to save $300 a month, sign up. But where did you get those numbers from? How did you compare? So definitely make sure they review it and explain it in detail. Even line by line sometimes can be a good way to go and on the reviews. So prices and everything, making sure that there's solutions along with savings, especially in healthcare. There's a lot of different options for streamlining just the workflow and how it works. So the quote is definitely one thing, but you want to take that with a grain of salt and also make sure that they understand your industry and how you're going to be taking payments. So getting the truth from all processors. So we've created a form that we distribute to most of the businesses out there, and I do a lot of speaking and networking and try to get this out to as many business owners as possible. We call it the processor Polygraph, and I sent it to Chad, and he's attached it to the presentation here. So you guys can grab it and download it and use it. Basically, it's a 3-page document with all the right questions to ask a processor. Do you have PCI fees or annual fees? What are your hours of customer service? Is it live customer service? How long are your rates guaranteed? Do you have online reporting? Is there a cost for that? All types of stuff that you wouldn't necessarily know to ask. This is a way to get all these answers. And then at the end, there's a place for the rep to actually sign saying, I'm approving all this and this is all true information. And you'll be surprised at how many reps either can't fill it out because they can't answer some of these basic questions, or won't sign their name to all of these answers. So there's a lot of reps that will come in and try and give you a quote, And if you hand them this processor polygraph and say, you got to fill this out before I'll even consider it, there's a lot of them that you just won't ever see again. So this is a great way to weed out those reps or those companies that really aren't the best option for you. All right, so some best practices for your office. So as a business accepting credit cards, how do you streamline that whole process so it's an afterthought and you don't, it just flows with your office? A big thing now is the chip cards. So is your office accepting chip cards, or are you still just swiping cards and through, whether it's a terminal or connected to a computer, or however you're processing it? If you're still just swiping everything, your office is taking on a lot of unnecessary liability. So it's been about 1.5 years now that the chip card mandate came out, and now the liability is shifted onto the business where for fraud, where if somebody comes in and runs a transaction or has a procedure done and pays you, $1,000, and they have a chip card and they see you just swipe that card, they can call their credit card processing company or their credit card company and say that was fraud, that wasn't me. And usually if there's a dispute or a chargeback, that gets sent back to the business, you show a signed receipt or something approval from the customer that it was a correct transaction, and you win that dispute and you get the money as the business. If the chip card was swiped and it was a card present transaction, not keyed in, then you automatically lose that chargeback. Even if you have a signed receipt, even if you have a signed contract with the merchant, if it was a swiped transaction on a chip card, you will lose that dispute. So a lot of businesses, that run very large transactions, this is a lot of liability that, a savvy patient that understands what's going on can take advantage of. So definitely make sure that your office is being able to process chip cards. Single processor integration to the practice management system. There's a lot of softwares out there, practice management, EMR systems, a lot of different software that has incorporated payments as a feature that can be processed directly through the software. But you got to be careful with that integration because there's a lot of software companies out there that only offer one processing company. So if you're going to be integrated and swipe and do everything directly through the software, you don't have options of choosing any processor you want. You only can choose one. You have to use their processing company. And really what happens is that the processing company splits some of the fees with the software company. So it's another revenue stream for that software company. So they want to push everybody they can to that processor because they make more money that way. And then you're also paying for the software. So in healthcare and dental, Dentrex and EagleSoft are some of the major ones out there that don't have any options. If you're integrated to those softwares and your fees go up, you're kind of stuck. You have to just either pay the higher fees or unintegrate and retrain your staff and all that kind of stuff. So in a lot of situations, most offices that I work with just use a side terminal, and they run everything on the software for patient tracking and everything that they do. And then when it comes to actually processing the payment, they just do it separately on a side terminal and manually update it in the software. I touched on this a little bit, but the PCI Security, PCI DSS, the DSS is just data security standard. And like I said, you have to be secure in how you deal with credit card information, who has access to credit card information in your office, and where that's being stored. It has to be kept under lock and key. You know, I suggest using a virtual terminal, which I'll get into in a minute, so there's no access to full credit card data from anybody in your office. If you do take card information over the phone, make sure that those, if you wrote it down somewhere, that it's shredded when it's disposed of, and make sure, you know, that all of your systems are, you know, fully behind firewalls. A lot of the online piece is part of HIPAA compliance as well, but you want to make sure that all that is up to date, and that you're secure in how you're dealing with it. There's a lot of fraud and hacking and things like that, and there's a lot of fees that can be assessed and penalties if your office gets breached and you lose credit card data and it gets traced back to you. So just making sure that your staff is, you know who has access to it and how they're dealing with credit card information, and that there's no leaks or security breaches available. And we help a lot of our clients with this stuff, not just with the survey for the PCI compliance, but just with their procedures and things like that. We can consult on what best options there are and how to train the staff and how to work with credit card data to make sure that your office is secure. Virtual terminals. So I love virtual terminals because this is a way for you to have access to credit card data without taking on any liability of storing that credit card data. So a lot of practices, you know, in orthodontics, for example, when you have patients that, you know, have monthly visits and just want to put it on a credit card, keep the credit card on file. For one, there's the recurring billing. If it's the same fee every single month, the virtual terminal can just automatically charge on the first of every month $100 for 6 months, or whatever the fees and time frame is. But it's a great way to free up office staff time. I've seen plenty of office managers or staff that, you know, sits in front of a credit card terminal and keys in 40 credit cards every month. And this is a way to just streamline that whole process. But the other way is having a card on file, just authorized by a patient to be used for any, you know, future charges or procedures. And if your practice deals with insurance companies and insurance payments, this is a great way to kind of streamline that whole process. So on the patient intake process, when you're collecting all the data from the patient, collecting the payment information and just having a credit card authorization form is a great thing to add to that if you're not already doing that. And be specific as possible on that form to what you're storing the credit card for and what you have authorized, or what the client is authorizing you to charge on that or use that for. And then they, you know, sign that, and then taking that form, putting all that data into the virtual terminal. And then I always suggest blacking out everything except the last 4 digits on the actual physical form that is kept in the office, because that's all that's really needed. If there is a dispute and the customer, you need to show that the customer has approved that you store the card and you use the card on file. All the processor will need to see is the last 4 digits on that form that they approve. And that way there's not, you know, full card data sitting in a filing cabinet somewhere for hundreds of patients. And then after the procedure is completed, and if you're billing an insurance company, they get back with what the patient still owes, that's when the race to really collect payments comes in. So a lot of offices I've seen have large AR balances. Their accounts receivables, you know, some isn't even collectible and just has to be written off because they can't get payments from patients. So if that is an issue with your office, this is a great way to kind of streamline that whole process. And most virtual terminals have a very low monthly fee. So a lot of them are free. and just a small setup fee. Like ours is a $99 setup fee, and there's no monthly fees. So just have a little bit of a case study here from one of our offices that when we first started talking to them, they definitely had an issue with AR balances. They had 5 to 10 patients per month that were overdue or going to collections, and it was just a process for them. They had somebody almost all fully dedicated to dealing with payments in the office. The solution we were able to do for them is get a virtual terminal in place. We also advised them on the credit card authorization form, how to fill it out, what to put on there. So they started getting that filled out for every patient that came in, and what the procedure was for, and that they would use the form and use the card on file 5 days after the first invoice billing. So you can choose however you want to do it in the time frames. We have one patient or one practice that just has the patient's charge that whatever is owed after the insurance company pays automatically gets charged to the card. It's really personal preference on the flow and the procedure that you want to have, but just make sure that's spelled out on what the patient is signing for and authorizing. But the result for them, it cut their AR balance down to basically nothing. They had 1 to 2 patients per month, down from 5 to 10, and it saved the staff hours of dealing with billing. And that's the biggest thing that the doctor really was appreciative of, is he was paying somebody almost 100% just to deal with billing, where that whole process was almost automated. So this is a thing we found in a lot of different healthcare practices, can just streamline the whole process of just the payments in general, and it makes it a very easy way to deal with patients, and you don't have to make those angry calls after the 3rd or 4th invoice. A thing that recently has come up, probably within the last 6-8 months, is a lot of insurance companies, we're finding, instead of sending checks, are now sending one-time use credit card numbers for practices to key into their terminal. If this is happening in your office, you've probably seen a spike in fees for your credit card processing. So I suggest stop accepting them. You can call the insurance companies and say you don't want to take them anymore, or you're not taking credit cards anymore, and you want the insurance company to pay by check again. The reason is because the card number that the insurance company is giving you is a corporate card. Corporate cards are the most expensive cards out there for businesses to accept. So not only are insurance companies always fighting to give you the lowest possible reimbursement they can, but now they're paying by credit card. And so they're getting their points and miles on the back end. And it's costing you, close to 3% extra to accept that credit card number and being keyed in now. So if you're seeing this in your practice, definitely I would suggest reaching out and trying to get back to getting checks instead of getting credit card numbers. We've had a lot of offices that were able to cut down hundreds of dollars a month in fees by switching back to getting check payments by insurance companies. So that's another thing that we've just tried to advise as many medical practices on to help mitigate some costs on the processing side. And then lastly, just to give you a little bit of information about us. Like I said, we really try to focus with healthcare. For all of our clients, we don't do contracts. All of our clients are on a month-to-month agreement. We figure there's no reason to lock you in. If we're doing what's right on our side, why would you change processors anyway? So we have no contracts. We guarantee our pricing. Whatever we quote you is what you get for as long as you're a customer of ours. So we have never increased rates on any of our customers. Dedicated contacts. We call our reps senior payment consultants, because that's really what we try to do. We try to more consult on what the best options are, whether it's with us or not. So you have the direct contact cell phone number for your customer or for your rep, and then white glove customer service. I talked about a couple times, really focusing on making sure that if there is ever a question or a problem, that it's handled immediately and you have a live person immediately on the phone that's knowledgeable and able to help you. And then healthcare experts. This has been an industry that I've found needs help and is very scattered, and just the payments, again, it's an afterthought. And a lot of times a doctor or dentist will set up the payments when they set up their bank account with, Bank of America, and then haven't even looked at it in 10 years. And the fees keep going up and up and up, and they don't need to. So those are some things that we try to help out with for all of our clients. And then lastly, just a little promotion for everybody on the webinar here today. We'd be happy to do an analysis of what your current processing situation is and just see if we can help. Worst case scenario, we'll let you know you're in a good place and give you peace of mind. But a lot of times there's either fees that can be reduced, or there's streamlining of the whole payment process and just a better structure to the payment flow of the office that we can help advise on. And then I'll also do a free setup for the virtual terminal. So we'll waive the $99 setup fee for anybody that does come on board from this webinar. So that's it. I think we just over 45 minutes, so almost right on time, Chad. But any questions that came up?
Yeah, a couple, Jesse. That was fantastic. Thank you very much. I honestly did not know all those little things that are there, and I wonder if some of our attendees knew that as well. So this is so it's unregulated. Do you think that's going to change?
It's been a topic for a long time, to see if it's going to come down and be regulated, kind of like banks are regulated. I don't foresee it changing anytime soon. Maybe down the road, but there's been so much other stuff going on that it hasn't been a big focus in the news and things like that. So I doubt anytime soon.
Okay. One of the questions from one of our users, our attendees today, is they're wondering about transitioning. If they were to go to another company, even like 360 Payments, obviously they can't store credit cards and be PCI compliant. So if they've had some recurring things, maybe they had a virtual terminal in the past, what's that transition like? Is it just kind of like starting over to some degree?
It can be. We work with the clients on the transition piece every single day. So the main thing is to, if you do sign up with a new processor, do not cancel or stop anything with the previous processor until the new processor is fully in place and fully processing. But make sure you do close the old processing account, because a lot of times there's fees or minimums that they'll charge even if you're not processing with them anymore. So with our clients, the transition process is very, very simple. If it's a terminal, we'll either reprogram or get out the new equipment, get them up and running, make sure they're running smoothly for 4 or 5 days, and then advise them on how to close their old processing account.
Perfect. One of the other questions is, does it really save me money by being with a different group outside of just a few dollars here and there? Is it worth the headache?
Right, and that's why I say, get the analysis, get the review. There are good processors out there and that charge good rates, and it happens all the time that we review the processing, and there's either no savings or there's $20 a month savings, and we'll be the first to tell you that. It doesn't make any sense for us to go through the process of changing somebody over for them to save $10 a month, unless they're having, horrible customer service issues, or there's something outside of, the fees section that that we can help with. But if it really comes down to bottom line, how much he's saving me, everything else is fine. If we review it and you're saving $20 a month, we'll say, hey, it's probably not worth changing anything unless you see this, and this go up. So we advise, again, like I said, we're payment consultants. We want to consult and give you peace of mind. And so a piece of that is just letting you know you're on good rates.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I was running some math while you were talking. If a practice is running $2 million through a machine each year, which is pretty normal for a lot of practices to process that type of money, and they're able to save 1% over the course of the year, right? 1 percentage point because they're a little smarter, they had a better rate, negotiated a little bit more. That's worth $20,000 to the practice, right to the bottom line. It's like, what could you do with $20,000 in your practice today? What kind of additional freedom does that give you, or what are you missing out by not doing that? I mean, it actually can be very significant. So absolutely worth doing at least that free analysis that you offered, and I appreciate you being so generous to offer that to our clients today.
A big piece of it is, I was just going to say on that, we've had many practices, like I said, that set up their processing years ago and just haven't paid attention to it. They just, get bombarded with solicitations, so they just never review anything. But we've had, single dentists that are processing, a couple $100 a month, or a couple $100,000 a month, and are saving, $500, $600, $700 a month in fees, just because they, thought they were on the best rate, but hadn't reviewed it in 5 years. So like you said, it's great to just at least take a look and see where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't hurt to do that by any means. One of the other questions that came in is in regards to the chip card reader, which you mentioned. Mm-hmm. So if they're not using a virtual terminal, they've got these other machines. Is there an additional cost to replace, I guess, those old machines? Is that what they're looking at oftentimes, is to get that new card reader?
It's a possibility. There can be. If they just got a new machine that takes chips, and it does make sense to switch over, sometimes we can just swap out the terminal for free. But sometimes if it is an older terminal that can't be used anymore, or can't needs to be upgraded, then there is a cost there. But like I said, most of the terminals are $300 to $400. We've had lots of clients that are saving $200 or $300 a month, where the cost of the terminal, the ROI on that is a month or two. So it's part of the consultation process where we review everything, what type of equipment they have, how long they've had it, and in certain cases we can replace it with no cost.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, well done. So Jesse, thank you again for being here today. Appreciate our attendees as well. Again, Jesse's there to help you. If you'd like at least an evaluation to see, gosh, where are we? Is there a way we could save money on what we're doing every month? That's why we do these. We're here to help you be more successful in your practice. There's also that processing Polygraph form. So if you're looking at things, you want to do an evaluation on companies and see where they're going to come in and what they will put their name to and guarantee, use that form. So feel free to download that here off of our area. It's right there on the control panel, and that's available to help you as well. But again, thanks to everyone for attending. We look forward to you coming in next month. Our next session will be with Rob Schallenberger from Becoming Your Best. Rob is one of the best speakers I've ever heard, really teaching on transformational leadership, as well as on creating visions and goals within an organization and helping major corporations achieve their goals. He's one of the prime consultants for groups like the Dallas Cowboys. We've actually had him in here, and really, really love what they have. Their book, Becoming Your Best, is a New York Times bestseller as well. So again, really looking forward to that. It'll be next month on March 28th. So go ahead and set that and put that on your calendar as well. again, thanks everyone. Jesse, special thanks to you and your team. Thank you for all you do and for being a great partner with Advice Media. And we wish everyone happy 28th, and the Ides of March are here, so we'll welcome them in. Take care, everyone. Bye now.